It's important to choose the correct lighting. The world of lighting is changing, particularly over the last few years, with a lot of new technologies being introduced. These new technologies means that we can light buildings better, more effectively, and particularly more efficiently, both saving energy and finance costs. The choice of lamps is becoming more and more important. For a long time, more than 100 years, we didn't really have a lot of choices. All light bulbs were incandescent. Then in industrial applications, we started to get what we call HID, or discharge lamps, and they worked well in those environments. Over recent times, we've seen some other new technologies evolved, things such as compact fluorescence, which you may be familiar with in use at home, little curly-whirly fluorescent lamps, which can be very efficient, but they do have their drawbacks. Over the last few years, and what we're seeing now really is the development of light-emitting diodes, or LED lighting. This is really revolutionary. Energy savings, we're talking about perhaps 80 to 90% compared to older incandescent technology, and they're also much more user-friendly, providing really good lighting from the instant you turn them on till you turn them off. Also, they're dimmable and adaptable in other ways that some of the compact fluorescent or HID lamps weren't able to be. Traditional light bulbs are changing. This is a traditional light bulb that you'll all be familiar with. It's an incandescent light bulb, and it functions by just heating up a piece of metal inside the lamp to a temperature where it glows and emits light. We're very familiar with that sort of technology, but that's more than 100 years old. Other type of lamp you'll see more recently will be the compact fluorescent type lamp, and this is basically just a traditional type fluorescent lamp, but wound up in a little circle and placed inside a lamp. These lamps are interchangeable. We're used to changing the light bulbs at home when they fail, and with an incandescent lamp that can be quite often, maybe a rated life of 1,000 hours. Some of these compact fluorescent lamps have a rated life of 4 or up to 8,000 hours, which is quite a lot longer than an incandescent lamp, but still not an awfully long time. What we're seeing now is LED type lamps. These lamps may look like a normal lamp, but quite different in their performance. A lot more efficient in terms of amount of light they produce for the wattage. What we did have is maybe a 100-watt lamp at home might be replaced with a 12-watt lamp emitting the same amount of light, and the rated life, instead of 1,000 hours, could be 50 or up to even 100,000 hours, so a lot longer. This is still something that I think manufacturers are talking about. We don't really need light bulbs that last 100,000 hours. In a home, if you use your lights into a normal level, that could be 25 years. Most people don't even stay in their homes for 25 years, so we'll see what happens in the future. What you're also seeing is changing though is traditionally we had maybe downlights in our home like this, where you just change the light bulb, and of course that was all very good. But there's quite a lot of expense and size and bulk involved in having a lamp with a lamp holder on it, a light fitting with a lamp holder, and going through that process of changing it. New fittings that have what we would call integrated LEDs now mean that the light source, the LED, actually forms part of the light fitting. And that light fitting exists, again, as I say, might be for 50,000 hours, complete as one unit, and at the end of that life, you will replace the whole fitting. There's no need to ever change the actual light source inside the fitting. You'll also be probably quite familiar with a small display lamp or reflector lamp with a little halogen lamp. These have been used a lot in homes as well as in retail environment, also museums and art galleries. A little lamp like this typically is 50 watts. They produce quite a lot of nice white light, but they also produce a lot of heat. This is a comparable LED lamp, again going from 50 watts down to maybe 10 watts. Similar lighting performance, but of course because it's only 10 watts, much less heat involved, so it can make a much nicer fitting. If you're in a commercial environment, all the little 50 watts do add up to make you a very hot retail environment, so we're seeing some savings in air conditioning and things like that. And also again, we can have a very long lamp life from products like this, maybe 25 or 50,000 hours. In the commercial environment, there's also a lot of efficiencies that can be made. This is a traditional type of fluorescent light fitting that everyone will be familiar with. Basically, it's a square metal box that contains some fluorescent light tubes, and it has in front of it some sort of prismatic or acrylic diffuser, which allows the light to come out and be spread around the room. This sort of light fitting has been designed probably 30, 40, 50 years ago, and we still continue to use them today. Even though the fluorescent light tubes inside are quite efficient, the actual fitting itself may only be 50% efficient. That is to say that 50% of the light that leaves the fluorescent tubes actually leaves the light fitting. So we're actually wasting half of the light inside the light fitting. These fittings also are quite big. and quite cumbersome, and they must also be considered in the height of the building. Typically these light fittings will be 100 millimetres tall, and they're allowed in a high-rise building to have a space in that ceiling space for your light fittings. And we can see when we look at LED fittings that with the use of more modern fittings, that space can also be reduced. This is a more efficient type of fluorescent light fitting that's commonly used in an office or commercial environment. And what we can see here in the back of the fitting, in the back of our box, we've got a fluorescent tube, which obviously emits the light. And then in the front of the tube, we have a range of reflectors or a lamella, which direct the light down into our working space. This type of fitting is quite a bit more efficient than our diffused fitting in terms of putting light on the desk, but of course what it does do is direct all the light straight down, and this can provide a cave-like environment. So there is basically no light going back up towards the ceiling space. So although we may get a reasonably efficient lighting on the desk, we don't get a very nice working environment unless we add some other light fittings to provide uplight or vertical illumination. This type of light fitting may be 70 or even maybe 80% efficient, in saying that 70 to 80% of the light that leaves the light tube actually leaves the light fitting. What we've got here is a new LED type light fitting, which would replace a fluorescent type fitting in a commercial environment. And what you can see about it is it's still made the same large size, so it fits into a typical ceiling environment. And we've got basically two small light panels down each side. This light has a combination, if you like, of the last two light fittings we looked for. The light is directed down, but also has this prismatic type diffuser on here, which does allow some light to be spread back and allow a little bit of lighting onto the ceiling space to provide a nicer environment. One of the most important things about this, apart from obviously the efficiency of the LED, is that the fitting now has much less material involved in its manufacture. It's much, much smaller. The whole of the light fitting will actually fit within the height of the ceiling, so our light fitting becomes part of the ceiling rather than something added on the back of the ceiling. So we've got more space in our ceiling. And also because obviously much less of use of materials, it can be manufactured for a considerable lesser cost. In the industrial space, we're really talking about very large light fittings, and this is typical of the sort of thing we'd see here, and very large light sources. And these typically have been what we call HID, or high intensity discharge light sources. These are really just a fluorescent tube, but on a much more higher scale, much higher pressure, so we're getting a lot of light from a relatively small source. These light fittings no doubt will change in the future to become LEDs, but at this stage we're really talking about using what we'd call a conventional technology. Another area where we can see much more improved efficiency in industrial workspaces is the use of control. In industry now, what we pretty much see is light fittings that are turned on in the morning and then maybe turned off at night, or not turned off at all, left on all day and all night. Other technologies which allow light fittings to be dimmed, either in relationship to people moving in an area or in relationship to sunlight coming through the roof, that sort of thing. If you've got skylights, can mean we can better utilise our energy.